Welcome to another edition of the Sports Roundtable. I'm Chris Schmaedeke, and on this gloomy Thursday, we're going to talk high school spring sports. Today we have Pat Rooney, Boco Preps Editor, and Paul Willis, Boco Preps Writer. So Pat, let's start us off talking about some general storylines this spring season.
Of course, the spring sports are up and rolling now, and getting into April already. Amazingly, it comes up on you fast. It seems just a few weeks ago we had our basketball teams playing into the last weekend of the season. Spring sports are already rolling, but kind of in the thick of the schedule now, and a lot of storylines starting to play out in baseball. Obviously, the big rivalries in the Longmont area. Over in the Boulder area, Fairview and Monarch are off to solid starts. In girls soccer, we're looking at a big battle in the Front Range League for certain, and also in the individual type sports like girls tennis, boys swimming, track and field. Certainly, many Boco Preps area athletes look to be in the mix for state titles this spring. But let's start off with baseball, and Paul Willis, of course, has covered high school baseball in Colorado for a long time for a number of publications, and Paul, last year, certainly one of the big storylines in the area was the rivalry, the Longmont-Niwot rivalry. Obviously, deep playoff runs for both teams. Obviously, Niwot has lost a few of those guys into this season. But what can we look for out of those rivalries and maybe in the 4A Northern League in general in baseball this spring?
Well, of those two you mentioned, Longmont clearly off to the better start, 6-2. They've got a sophomore lefty, Dagan Rank. He's striking out about 2 guys per inning so far, so decent start for Longmont. Niwot, they have the holdovers Ford Ladd and Nick Elrod, pitchers from last year, but not many other guys back. In fact, guys like Alex Kinnison, Pate Katechis from last year will be playing on the Collegians this summer after their first year of college. But look for Niwot, a tough start for them. Didn't get a win until a few weeks into the season. With those 2 pitchers up top, they could make a solid run in league and sneak into the playoffs. If you move over to the Tri-Valley, Erie off to the hot start, 4-0. And then Holy Family up from 3A, little adjustment period for them, but I wouldn't count them out. Pitcher Austin Brown, one of the beasts of the area, he's started well as well. So look for Holy Family to make a playoff run in 4A.
And Paul, you already mentioned a couple players, and who do you think is the best player you've seen so far? Is it Fairview's Ryan Mad, or is it Monarch's Logan Sewell, or is it somebody else?
Well, it's tough to pick between those two, 1A, 1B maybe. We'll start with Sewell, 3-0, 20 innings, not a single run allowed. He struck out 36 in those. Interestingly, he's going to Southern Illinois primarily as an outfielder, and they haven't shut the door on him pitching, which is good considering hitters are batting 103 against him. Then you've got Madden from the stacked Fairview team, 2-1, 0.39 ERA. He's hit 3 home runs as well. If you have to give an edge, maybe to Sewell so far just because of the dominant start, but those guys are going to be right there in the Player of the Year race. And don't count out Kyle Leahy of Erie. He's going Division II, Colorado Mesa, but Mesa, as you remember, is the number 2 team in Division II, finished runner-up last season.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and switch gears now and talk a little girls soccer. And Pat, why don't you talk about Broomfield's move to 5A and a little bit about our 4A teams as well?
Yeah, of course, the Front Range League and 5A, annually one of the best girls soccer leagues in the state every year. And should be no exception this season. Of course, the addition of Broomfield moving up from 4A adds a new dynamic. As we all know, last fall, the Broomfield boys soccer team made a very seamless transition into 5A, winning the state title in their first year in the classification. Certainly the girls team is a threat to do the same this year. However, Broomfield did suffer a big injury, losing senior midfielder Haley Mazzola to a torn knee ligament. She's down for the season. She's a recruit from Arizona, and definitely kind of plays that sort of field general role for Coach Jim Davidson's team, and that'll certainly be a loss of leadership as much as production for Broomfield. However, this Broomfield team, as we all know, tends to reload on the fly. Already, at the beginning of this week, freshman Haley Stodden already has 5 goals rather. Sophomore Jordan Goodwin has 4 goals already. Michaela Stark remains one of the top forwards in the state for Broomfield. So the Eagles still have plenty of talent. Still have a lot of weapons to unleash, even with Mazzola sidelined, and I expect them to maybe not miss a beat with this injury. Of course, mark your calendars for April 14th. That is the day Broomfield visits Fairview in a girls soccer showdown. Granted, it'll only be the middle of April, but much will probably be decided in the way of the Front Range League race on that day. Looking over 4A, of course, Broomfield's move to the 5A Front Range League has kind of a trickle-down effect with the 4A Northern League, a league Broomfield's dominated for years. Kind of opens the door for teams like Niwot or even Silver Creek to make a run. Silver Creek is also dealing with the loss of a key player, lost Jenna Schemmel before the season even started, last year's leading scorer for the Raptors. Tough start for them, but they've picked up of late, have began the week with a win against Centaurus. It was their third straight win. And we're looking forward to a battle against Niwot just today. That game's been canceled due to the weather. The only two undefeated teams so far early in Northern League play, and Niwot looks to be the class of the league again. They're just coming off a thrilling last-second win against Thompson Valley. They've gotten production across the board from Coach Rob Johnson's roster, and I expect them to be in the mix not only for the Northern League title, but also make a possible deep run in the 4A state tournament.
All right, this is a question for both of you guys. We'll go ahead and start with you, Paul. Talk about some storylines for the other spring sports.
Well, in lacrosse, if you look at our 4 boys teams, Monarchs clearly off to the hottest start, 6-2 so far. The freshman Chad Kruger, he has 26 goals, 19 assists. Andrew Zwiers, Max Weisner also helping out on the offensive end. If you go to girls, our lone team, Centaurus, new coach Bob Klein, 4-2 start. They took some lumps out in California this week, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Phenomenal sophomore goalie Morgan Pitzer, good attack with Sarah Myers, Andrea Kim, Catherine Burns, girls like that. 5th straight trip to the Final Four isn't out of the question for the Warriors.
I want to talk about boys swimming for a moment. We've got 2 of the area's best in Boulder's Christian Filer, Silver Creek's Tyler Liss. Both these guys should be in the mix for potential multiple state titles at their respective state meets next month. Filer from Boulder, 4th in the 50 freestyle last year, 6th in the backstroke. He's coming off a very strong performance just a few weeks ago at the annual Coaches Invitational. He's a smart kid, heading to Princeton, and looks like he's ready to finish his senior year off strong, possibly with some state medals, first place medals. Same can be said with Tyler Liss over at Silver Creek. For years has been one of the most dominant individual swimmers at the 4A state meet, and I expect this year to be no different for his senior season. Track and field, once again, the Boco Preps area athletes probably will fill the podiums quite regularly, the medal podiums quite regularly at state next month. A couple standouts early, of course, are Andrew Barlow, the pole vaulter from Monarch, Keely Parrish, the discus thrower from Longmont, have already started setting school records that they will probably add to before the end of this season, and certainly state records possibly in the mix for those two. Of course, Parrish is following in some pretty big footsteps with the marks left behind by Silver Creek's Valerie Allman a few years ago, but nonetheless should be in the mix for some state titles for both of those athletes. And same with girls tennis. Amazingly, this weekend we are only 5 weeks away from the girls tennis state tournaments, the first state tournaments of the spring, and Fairview in 5A, Niwot in 4A, both looking pretty strong as teams. Of course, Fairview at the top has one of the top freshman singles players in the state in Amber Shen, and right behind her at number 2 singles, Natalie Munson. She's been the state runner-up rather at number 2 singles the last 2 years, and really kind of focus on getting over that hump this year as a junior to win that state title. Niwot also has one of the top freshman singles player in 4A in Julia Pence. Niwot's off to a strong start once again, and a really deep team with the Cougars, and expect them to be in the mix when the 4A state tournament rolls around.
That's a wrap on this edition of the Sports Roundtable. Make sure you follow these guys on Twitter, at PRooney07 and at PaulWillis21. And make sure you go to BocoPreps.com for all your high school sports news.